January 2025 will be remembered as the month the mask of the elite didn't just slip, it was torn off with a violence that left the world gasping for air. It started with a whisper in the corridors of the Department of Justice and ended with a digital tidal wave that no public relations firm could ever hope to contain. We are talking about the release of the long-awaited Epstein files, a mountain of evidence consisting of 3 million pages of documents, over 2,000 videos that were never meant to see the light of day, and 180,000 images capturing faces that once dictated the morals of the world from their golden pedestals. But as the servers groaned under the weight of millions of people trying to download the truth, something strange happened in the quiet, manicured streets of Montecito. Before the first page was even indexed by the public, one of the most recognizable figures in television history was already gone. Ellen DeGeneres didn't just leave, she fled. She sold her sprawling estate, a fortress of privacy and luxury, and relocated to the foggy, isolated hills of the Cotswolds in England. On the surface, it looked like a quiet retirement, a final exit after a legendary career. But the timing was too perfect, too clinical. As the internet wasted its breath chasing ghost stories and manufactured conspiracies about vampires in the shadows, the actual documents began to tell a far more grounded and terrifying story. Out of the 300 high-profile individuals referenced in the broader index of those files, one name sent a localized shockwave through the investigation: Ellen DeGeneres. She wasn't just a guest at a party. She wasn't just a face in the background of a blurry photograph. The whispers from within the investigation suggest something much darker. They suggest she may have been operating as a high-level handler, a bridge between the world of daytime sunshine and the pitch-black basement of the global elite. And her rumored assignment? A young girl named Ava Barron Combs. To the average viewer, Ava was just a heartwarming story. In 2020, Sean Diddy Combs appeared on an Instagram live stream to introduce the world to his newly adopted daughter. It was presented as an act of pure altruism, Diddy even comparing himself to other celebrities who had expanded their families through adoption. But even then, the air felt thin. The interaction between the music mogul and the young girl felt coached, stiff, and deeply uncomfortable. It was a performance for the cameras, a shield of domesticity for a man whose empire was already starting to rot from the inside. But if you look closer, the timeline of this supposed adoption begins to fracture. Internet sleuths, the new digital detectives of our age, found photographs of Ava around Diddy's family as early as 2017, a full 3 years before the public announcement. Who was she? Why was she there? And more importantly, why did she completely vanish from the public eye the moment the cameras stopped rolling? No more Instagram posts, no more public appearances. It was as if she had been erased from existence. You have to understand the scale of this deception. We are looking at a system where human beings are treated like currency, where children are moved across borders and through social circles like high-value assets. The Department of Justice files were supposed to be the end of the mystery, but when they finally arrived, they were a graveyard of black ink. 90% of the names in those 3 million pages were redacted. 90% of the truth was hidden behind the heavy, cold hand of government censorship. They gave us enough to satisfy the hunger of the masses, but the real architects, the ones who managed the flow of victims, were still being protected. And yet, the connection between Ellen and Diddy refused to stay buried. It is a connection built on power, on the management of image, and on the terrifying possibility that a beloved talk show host was the perfect wolf in sheep's clothing. Think about the skill set required to be a handler. You need to be approachable. You need to be trusted by millions. You need to be able to manipulate people's emotions with a smile and a dance. For nearly 20 years, Ellen DeGeneres refined that exact persona. She was the person everyone wanted to be friends with, the woman who could make any scandal disappear with a well-timed joke. But in 2022, that image cracked. Allegations of a toxic, controlling, and manipulative workplace environment surfaced, painting a picture of a woman who ruled her domain with an iron fist and demanded absolute silence from those beneath her. It was the first time the public saw the machine behind the Be Kind brand. It was the first time we saw the traits of a professional manager of people. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To understand how a daytime legend could be linked to a girl who disappeared into the shadow of a music mogul, we have to look at the cold, hard logistics of the crime. We have to look at the geography of Star Island, the screaming cargo containers at the Miami port, and a coded phone call about pizza boxes that changed everything. The story of Ava Baron Combs is not just a story of a missing girl. It is the key to unlocking a network that spans from the private islands of the Caribbean to the television studios of Burbank. It is a story of how the most famous people in the world hide their darkest secrets in plain sight, using the very fame we gave them as a shield. But the shield is breaking. The files are out. And though the ink is thick and the names are blacked out, the patterns are starting to emerge. Let us take a step back and look at the girl who started it all, and the moment the world first realized that something was very, very wrong in the House of Combs. The girl in the frame didn't look like a daughter. She looked like a ghost waiting for her cue. It was 2020, a year when the world was trapped indoors, glued to their screens, and Sean Diddy Combs decided to give the masses a distraction. He went live on Instagram, the digital stage where he reigned supreme, and introduced Ava Baron Combs. He spoke with a rehearsed warmth, a paternal pride that felt as manufactured as a pop record. He claimed he had adopted her, drawing parallels to the high-profile adoptions of icons like Madonna. He wanted the world to see him as a savior, a man with a heart large enough to bridge the gap between his world and this young, white girl who seemed entirely out of place in the high-octane environment of Star Island. But if you watch that footage today, with the benefit of hindsight and the weight of the 2025 disclosures, the skin on your arms starts to crawl. Ava didn't speak much. She sat there, her eyes darting towards someone off camera, as if seeking permission for every breath. Her smiles were brittle, flashing on and off like a faulty neon sign. It was a performance that lacked soul. But the real cracks began to show, not in what was said, but in what the internet refused to forget. Within hours of that broadcast, digital investigators began digging through the fossilized layers of social media. What they found shattered the adoption narrative into 1,000 jagged pieces. Photos surfaced from 2017, 3 full years before Diddy claimed she entered his life. There she was, a child in the background of family gatherings, standing on the fringes of the Combs inner circle. She wasn't a new addition. She had been there all along. She was a secret that had finally been given a name, but the name was just another layer of the lie. Then, as quickly as she appeared, Ava Baron Combs was erased. The Instagram account that had briefly pulsed with activity was scrubbed. The photos were deleted. The mentions ceased. It was a digital execution. In an era where every moment is documented, every meal photographed, and every vacation live-streamed, a young girl living in the house of one of the richest men in music simply ceased to exist in the public record. No school records, no sightings at the local malls, no updates on her well-being. She became a void. And in the world of elite trafficking and high-level manipulation, voids are never accidental. They are maintained. They are managed. This is where the term handler moves from the pages of a spy novel into the reality of the Hollywood Hills. Survivors of these circles, like Allie Carter, have spoken about the invisible architecture that keeps the system running. It isn't just about the men in suits or the security guards at the gate. It is about the women who sit in the middle. The handlers are the ones who bridge the gap between the victim and the world. They are the ones who teach the party favors how to behave, how to smile through the trauma, and how to remain silent when the cameras are rolling. They provide a sense of false security. They are the friendly faces that make the unthinkable feel normal. To a young girl like Ava, a handler wouldn't look like a monster. She would look like a mentor, She would look like a powerful, successful woman who the entire world loves. Someone who could teach her how to navigate the shark-infested waters of the elite. The question that keeps investigators awake at night is why Ellen DeGeneres was the one chosen to step into this orbit. For 20 years, Ellen was the gatekeeper of American kindness. Her show was the ultimate validation for any celebrity. To sit on that white sofa was to be anointed as part of the good Hollywood. But behind the scenes, the atmosphere was different. The 2022 collapse of her daytime empire exposed a culture of fear, a workplace where silence was the primary currency, and the "be kind" mantra was used as a weapon to suppress any form of dissent. Those who worked there described an environment of total control, where eye contact was forbidden and the hierarchy was absolute. This wasn't just a bad boss situation, it was a masterclass in human management. It was the exact psychological toolkit required to manage a high-value asset in a shadow network. When you look at the proximity of their worlds, the pieces start to lock together with a sickening click. Diddy and Ellen didn't just inhabit the same tax bracket, they inhabited the same specialized ecosystem of power. While Diddy provided the infrastructure, the mansions, the yachts, the private docks, Ellen provided the social cover. She was the one who could make a disappeared girl seem like a heartwarming adoption story if the need ever arose. She was the one who understood the mechanics of the long game. And the timing of her departure from the United States, selling her Montecito fortress just as the 3 million pages of the Epstein files were being prepared for release in January 2025, suggests a woman who knew exactly what was hidden in the 90% of the text that was blacked out. She didn't just move for the scenery. You don't abandon the epicenter of your power for the quiet of the English countryside unless the ground beneath you is about to turn into a sinkhole. The files contained references to over 300 high-profile individuals, but it's the connections between the names that matter more than the names themselves. It's the way the music industry's dark heart in Miami bled into the sunshine of California's talk show royalty. Ava was the link. She was the proof that the adoption was something else entirely. And if Ava was the party favor being managed, then the person managing her had to be someone above suspicion, someone who could walk into any room and command respect, someone who had spent 2 decades convincing us that she was the safest person in the world. But as the fog rolls over the Cotswolds, and the lawyers in Washington, D.C. continue to hide the truth behind black ink, the screams from the Miami port are finally beginning to be heard. The sound of a jailhouse phone is unmistakable. It is the sound of a man who has lost his kingdom and is desperately trying to bury the bodies before the sun comes up. In the early weeks of 2025, a series of leaked recordings from the federal facility where Sean Diddy Combs was being held began to circulate through the digital underground. These weren't the typical calls of a man professing his innocence or checking on his legal team. These were instructions. In a voice that fluctuated between cold command and frantic desperation, Diddy was heard telling an associate to make sure they got rid of all the leftover pizza boxes. He told them to make sure they recycled the plastic, just like they had talked about before. To the untrained ear, it sounds like mundane housekeeping, perhaps the ramblings of a man obsessed with order, even behind bars. But in the world of high-stakes investigations, pizza boxes is a known shorthand for something far more incriminating. Investigators believe these were instructions to destroy physical evidence, hard drives, laptops, and stacks of digital storage that contained the visual records of years of elite gatherings. The plastic wasn't trash. It was the physical media that held the secrets of names we have yet to see. But the most chilling part of these leaks wasn't just the code. It was the rumor that the source of these recordings was someone inside the inner circle who had finally broken ranks. Whispers began to grow that Ava, the vanished daughter, was the one who had ensured these tapes reached the right hands before they could be turned into ash and plastic shards. But to understand the true scale of what was being managed, you have to look past the mansions and into the industrial heart of Miami. Sean Diddy Combs' estate on Star Island is a marvel of architecture, but its location is more than just a flex of wealth. It sits in literal shadow of the Miami port, one of the busiest and most chaotic shipping hubs in the world. While Jeffrey Epstein relied on the isolation of private islands and his own fleet of planes to move his assets, the logic of the 21st century elite has evolved. Islands are fixed targets. They are easy to monitor. But a shipping port? A port is a labyrinth of moving steel. In late 2024 and early 2025, the Miami port was paralyzed by a massive strike. On the surface, it was a dispute over wages and working conditions, a classic labor struggle. But as the picket lines grew, a different story began to emerge from the men who actually worked the docks. These weren't conspiracy theorists. These were hardened laborers who spent their lives moving the world's commerce. They started talking about things they heard in the dead of night, sounds that didn't belong in the rhythmic clanking of a commercial harbor. They reported hearing screams, stifled, rhythmic, and terrifying, coming from inside the cargo containers. One worker, speaking under the condition of anonymity, stated that they weren't just striking because they were overworked. They were striking because they were sick and tired of the cargo containers screaming back at them. The containers were supposed to be filled with electronics, textiles, and dry goods. They weren't supposed to be filled with human terror, and these containers were being staged and moved in the direct vicinity of the private docks that serviced the elite homes of Star Island. If Epstein's operation was a boutique service, what was being alleged around Diddy was an industrial-scale logistics network. This is where the role of a handler becomes a matter of life and death. If you are moving party favors through shipping containers and industrial ports, you need someone who can manage the psychological trauma of the victims so they don't draw attention when they finally step out into the light of a high-end party. You need someone who can convince a terrified teenager that this is just a rite of passage, a dark bridge to a golden future. The proximity of Diddy's home to the port allowed for a seamless transition from the industrial to the ultra-luxury. A girl could arrive in a container and, within an hour, be walking through the doors of a mansion, cleaned up, dressed in designer clothes, and ready to be managed. It is a system of human laundering. And this is exactly where the allegations against Ellen DeGeneres take their most sinister turn. When we talk about her as a handler, we aren't just talking about social introductions. We are talking about the final stage of the process, the normalization of the nightmare. Consider the case of Usher. At the age of 13, he was sent to live at what was called Puffy Flavor Camp for an entire year. It was framed as a mentorship, a training ground for a future star. But what kind of dream requires a 13-year-old to live in the home of a grown man without his parents? What kind of mentorship happens behind closed doors and requires a code of absolute silence? Then there is Justin Bieber. Diddy famously claimed to have custody of the 15-year-old singer for 48 hours, an interaction that was filmed and released to the public. In the video, the power dynamic is jarring. Bieber looks small, overwhelmed, and intensely focused on saying the right thing. These were the public examples. These were the ones they felt comfortable showing us. If this was what they allowed the cameras to see, imagine what was happening in the containers. Imagine what was happening in the rooms where the cameras were forbidden. Ava was part of this machinery. She was the one who saw the transition from the screaming steel boxes to the velvet sofas. And if she was the one who leaked the pizza box call, it means the handler failed. It means the system of silence that Ellen DeGeneres allegedly helped maintain for decades finally suffered a catastrophic breach. The kindness brand wasn't strong enough to drown out the sound of a cargo container screaming in the night. And as the feds began to piece together the GPS data of those shipping units, the flight to the Cotswolds became the only logical move for a woman who knew exactly what those pizza boxes contained. The architecture of a handler is not built with concrete and steel, but with smiles, soft lighting, and the ultimate currency of the 21st century: trust. To the public, a handler is a shadow figure from a spy novel, but in the reality of the global elite, the most effective managers of human assets are the people we invite into our living rooms every single day. They are the individuals who have spent decades perfecting the art of the kind mask. For nearly 20 years, the daytime landscape was dominated by a single brand of manufactured warmth. Ellen DeGeneres wasn't just a host, she was a cultural arbiter. She was the woman who told us who to love, what to buy, and how to behave. But when you look at the mechanics of her operation through the lens of the January 2025 disclosures, the Be Kind mantra takes on a chilling, predatory double meaning. Survivors like Allie Carter have pulled back the curtain on how these circles operate. Carter didn't use the language of a victim. She used the language of inventory. She described herself as a party favor, something that could be taken off the table, used, and then put back when the elite were finished. In this ecosystem, a handler's job is to ensure the inventory stays compliant. They're the ones who vet the girls, who coach them on how to interact with high-value guests, and who enforce the silence when the sun comes up. They are women you would never suspect, because their public image is their greatest weapon. If a young girl like Ava is feeling the weight of the nightmare, who is more qualified to talk her back from the edge than the woman the entire world views as a grandmotherly figure of justice and fun? This is why the collapse of Ellen's show in 2022 was more than just a media scandal. It was a failure of the management system. The allegations that surfaced didn't just point to a mean boss. They described a culture of absolute psychological dominance. Employees spoke of a no eye contact rule, a hierarchy where speaking to the head of the machine was a fireable offense. This is the exact blueprint for a handler's environment. It is about creating a vacuum of power where the victim, or the employee, feels entirely isolated and dependent on the grace of the person at the top. When the show ended, the shield of daily broadcast began to thin. The infrastructure that allowed her to move through elite circles with total immunity was starting to rust. And then came the files. When the Department of Justice released those 3 million pages, the blackout ink was heavy, but it couldn't hide the logistical overlap. The files referenced high-profile fixers and facilitators who worked between the Epstein and Combs networks. Investigators began to look at the travel logs, the private dinners, and the suspiciously timed mentorships. They began to ask what kind of dream can't be named, and what kind of mentorship requires absolute secrecy. They looked at how a young girl like Ava, who had no biological connection to the music industry, ended up as the adopted daughter of a man whose home was a staging ground for the Miami port's shadow traffic. The connection between the music mogul and the daytime queen was a marriage of necessity. Diddy had the muscle and the logistics. Ellen had the social laundering and the psychological expertise. Together, they could take a party favor from a cargo container and turn her into a social media sensation, hiding the trauma behind filters and coached interviews. But as the pizza box instructions were leaked and the dock workers began to speak about the screams in the night, the partnership became a liability. The 90% of the files that remain redacted are the only things keeping the full extent of this handler network from public view. But even black ink has a limit. When Ellen and her wife sold their Montecito fortress and vanished into the English countryside, they weren't just seeking a new start. They were seeking a jurisdiction where the reach of the January 2025 subpoenas might be softened by distance and diplomacy. The Cotswolds are beautiful, isolated, and quiet. The perfect place for a woman who has spent her life managing the noise of others to finally wait for the storm to pass. But the story of Ava Baron Combs isn't going away. If Ava is indeed the one who ensured the world heard those jailhouse calls, then the handler's greatest student has become her most dangerous adversary. The mask is gone, the show is over, and the audience is finally seeing what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the real management begins. The quiet of the English countryside is a world away from the sterile, fluorescent-lit rooms where the Department of Justice determines which truths the public is allowed to digest. In the Cotswolds, the air is thick with history and the kind of silence that only extreme wealth can buy. But for Ellen DeGeneres, that silence must feel heavy. It is the silence of a woman who knows that while 90% of the 3 million pages released in January 2025 were buried under thick black bars of redaction, the 10% that escaped is enough to set the world on fire. The flight to England was a calculated move, a retreat to a place where the headlines feel a little more distant and the reach of American subpoenas feels a little more complicated. But geography cannot erase the patterns that have already been carved into the public consciousness. We have to ask ourselves why the system works so hard to distract us. While the internet was flooded with absurd, manufactured theories about ancient blood rituals and supernatural entities, the real evidence was hiding in plain sight. It was hiding in the logistics of shipping ports. It was hiding in the suspicious timelines of celebrity adoptions. It was hiding in the toxic culture of a daytime television set that functioned more like a re-education camp than a variety show. The distraction is a weapon. As long as the public is chasing shadows, the people managing the reality can keep moving their assets, shredding their pizza boxes, and relocating their lives across oceans. The redacted names in the Epstein files are the ghosts of a system that is still very much in operation. These names belong to the architects, the funders, and, most importantly, the handlers. If Ellen DeGeneres was indeed the one managing victims like Ava Baron Combs, she wasn't alone. A network of this scale requires a small army of trusted, public-facing figures to maintain the illusion of normalcy. The question is no longer just about what happened on a private island or in a Star Island mansion. The question is how many other party favors are currently being managed by the people we trust to entertain us? How many other girls like Ava have been scrubbed from the digital record, their lives reduced to a void that no one is allowed to mention? The walls are closing in, but they are thick, and they are protected by the highest levels of power. Sean Diddy Combs sits in a cell, his empire in ruins. But the machinery he helped build is still humming in the background. Ava remains a ghost, a girl who saw too much, and may have finally decided to speak in the only language the elite understand, the language of leaked evidence. And Ellen, the woman who spent 20 years telling us to be kind, is now a resident of a quiet English village, waiting to see if the black ink on those 3 million pages will hold, or if the truth will finally bleed through. We appreciate you taking the time to dive into this complex and troubling investigation with us. The reality of these systems is often darker than any fiction, and it is only through collective vigilance that we can hope to see the full picture. If you found this report insightful, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. It helps us continue to bring these hidden stories to light. As we look at the evidence presented today, we want to hear from you. How do you feel about the timing of Ellen's relocation to England right as these files were made public? Do you believe that public figures who act as handlers should face the same legal consequences as those directly involved in the crimes? If you find it difficult to put your thoughts into words, given the gravity of these allegations, simply write "thank you" in the comments to support our work. It truly means a lot to the team. Thank you for your support, and stay tuned as we continue to follow the threads of this unraveling network.